Welcome to the Fantasy Football Endgame with your hosts, Pierre Camus and Chris Moncano.
Hey guys, welcome to the Fantasy Football Endgame running back waiver wire advice for week 4. That's right, 3 games into the season, and there's just not many running backs out there, and the well is run dry, I'll tell you that. Not surprising because it's hard to find a good running back these days, and I think they've all been scooped up after the first couple weeks, especially with all those injuries. But there's always some options out there, even if they're not the most exciting. Let's look at some of the players that you might be interested in adding ahead of week 4. Don't forget, though, before anything else, hit subscribe because we're here each and every week with every position for waiver wire, right? We got quarterbacks up, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and start sit advice for all those same positions. All right, so let's get to it for week 4. So I have to say that probably the biggest name out there is Myles Gaskin. And I say that because if you watched Thursday night game, then you saw that it was pretty much the Gaskin show. Got 22 carries, didn't do a whole lot with them, but Matt Breida and Jordan Howard, the guys we thought were going to form the committee in Miami, they aren't. Breida got 3 touches, and then Howard, of course, comes in when they're on the 1-yard line, and he scores a 1-yard touchdown. So this is the problem, is that Gaskin is going to get a ton of touches. He isn't doing a whole lot with them, and he's not going to score almost any touchdowns unless he happens to break off a long one because they're always bringing in Jordan Howard when they're inside the 5. And then Breida is just nothing more than a change of pace guy. I like give him a breather. Gaskin does have the opportunity, though. At least that gives you somewhat of a floor, right, in fantasy. You want the guy who's getting the touches. So even if Jordan Howard might have 3 or 4 touchdowns, a week from now, doesn't matter. That's all he's getting you, and that's not guaranteed. All right, so we can ignore Howard. We can definitely ignore Breida. Gaskin isn't exciting, but you know what? If you're in need of somebody who you know is going to play and see touches, right now he's it, okay? And he's still just a little bit over 50% rostered in Yahoo leagues, so that means he's mostly available. A lot of competitive leagues have picked him up. Some people are still waiting. I would say grab him now because you never know, right? There's not that many running backs out there who are going to present that kind of, I hate to say the word upside, but I guess at least potential for production, right? Because he's touching the ball. Now, we also look for backfields. At this point, we're just looking for backfields where there's injuries, right? Guys who are filling in spots. So Jeff Wilson is a guy who is going to do that because not only Raheem Mostert but Tevin Coleman both out for the near future, at least a couple more weeks, we think. Jerick McKinnon isn't going to touch the ball that many times because he's just not that kind of back, right? He's not built for that. He's not a big back. He is going to get the receptions. That's a good thing, all right? And so he's definitely got the more upside, but he's taken it in almost every league, right? We told you about this. Chris and I have been preaching the word of Jerick McKinnon, right? Buy into the Jet since the preseason, okay? We told you he was a sleeper. Didn't know the injuries were going to happen, but it doesn't matter. That's not the point. We knew he'd be involved, and he's productive when he's on the field. Wilson, not so much, all right? So he's not super productive, but he's on the field, right? And they need a second running back, and he's it. And just like we talked about Jordan Howard, he is the goal line back. He's going to get some short touchdowns. Everything he does pretty much will be short. 2 yards, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, but it's better than nothing, better than guys sitting on the bench. And what was interesting is that this week he was involved in the passing game, caught 3 passes, that's kind of McKinnon's thing, but Wilson, and he turned one of those into a touchdown, right? So 3 receptions for 54 yards and a score, and that's not bad, right? You'll take that. It won't happen every week. They're not going to play the Giants every week, but if Wilson is going to be on the field, this is a team that's just desperate for anybody to help, and he could be the guy that helps. So in addition to the short touchdowns, he can get you a little bit here and there as far as yardage and a couple catches. So I would say Wilson, not a guy that you necessarily need to go out and start every week. Definitely got more appeal in standard leagues than full PPR. But he'll do, right? If you're in a pinch, and a lot of you are, you need help at running back, he'll do. Now, here's an interesting name. Let's talk about Carlos Hyde, just because we have to, right? Not because I want to, not because I thought we'd be talking about Carlos Hyde in 2020, but Chris Carson, got Gator roll there at the end of the game. And so there was a lot of concern when he got checked out in the tent, looking at his knee, his ankle, thought that could be something serious. Thankfully, it's not. It looks like the word is that he avoided damage. But that said, he's going to be limited in practice. Is he going to be a full go for this week? Hard to say. And here's the other thing. They might not need him this week because they're playing the Dolphins. So if Russ, does his thing in the first half and they get up big, it could be a situation where game script favors the running game, right? Seattle says, okay, let's take the foot off the gas and let's run the ball. But you know what? Instead of pushing Carson in the second half, let's give it to Hyde, give him a few more carries. We could also see Travis Homer mixed in, but he's not going to get the ball that much. DJ Dallas is an interesting name. If Carson doesn't play, right? If Carson is ruled out and they say, you know what, we'll just sit you out this week, or it's a little more serious, he has some swelling or something. DJ Dallas is a guy you might want to look at in really deep PPR leagues because he's the guy who will catch the passes, right? That was mainly his role. He's a converted receiver from the University of Miami, just so you know. So Carlos Hyde won't catch the ball. But he's probably going to be the lead back if Carson doesn't go. So kind of monitor reports. I wouldn't say to spend much on Fab, if anything, more than a couple of bucks on Hyde. And that's only if you are the Carson owner. All right. But just keep this in mind. If something happens, there's a setback, that Seattle backfield, there's definitely some options there. All right. Now you probably saw the highlight where Rex Burkhead, somehow his body was inhabited by Barry Sanders, right? And he made that amazing play off the Cam Newton screen pass. And, he ducked some tacklers and he dove into the end zone. And he found the end zone 2 more times. So this was like, what was it, the last week or the second to last week of the season, back when he was in Cincinnati 5 years ago. He had a game kind of like this, right? He broke out. But this is what Rex Burkhead does, okay? He shows up once in a while. He has a monster game, and then he kind of just goes back to his corner. This was a result of James White not playing. We know the unfortunate situation with White's family. He didn't play. He probably will be back next week. If that's the case, then Burkhead probably doesn't have much value. That said, he's an option. Maybe White doesn't play. We don't know exactly the situation. This is, I think, a 4-man committee now officially. J.J. Taylor actually got the bulk of the carries. He didn't do a whole lot with them, but he did. He got 11 rushes. Sonny Michel only got 9. He went for 100 yards. Okay, so Michel was effective. But again, this was all just a matter of the actual game flow. All right. The Patriots were able to run the ball. They didn't pass the ball like they had been previous weeks. We don't know what we're going to get out of the Patriots. And I think it's pretty obvious you don't trust a Patriots running back, period, at this point. So Burkhead, I'm not saying don't add him. I'm just saying don't pay for last week's stats and don't expect this going forward. All right. He's kind of a desperation option if somebody does get hurt or if there's a bye week that you need filling, and there's not at this point. Now, somebody who is a little more interesting here is Anthony Mcfarland Jr. I'm not ready to go out and spend big bucks on him either because we made that mistake with Benny Snell a couple of weeks ago. All right, so it looks like he may be passing Snell, but again, it's too soon to say that, right? This is his first game, his debut. A lot of rookies are just now getting into action. The team's kind of slow playing them. Now, here's what's interesting. Snell had that monster week 1 and then, back to the bench because Connor's the lead. We know Connor's the lead back. That's not the issue here. But Snell had a fumble last week, and that was something that maybe made them think, hey, let's give the rookie a try. And Mcfarland was pretty good. Again, limited touches, but 6 carries, 42 yards. Looked pretty good. Snell, 7 carries, 11 yards. Now, that's just one game. And Snell is still the guy who they're kind of giving the ball to in the red zone. So it's too early to say Mcfarland even has fantasy value, but he's a guy, again, if you're looking for an RB to stash, if you're looking for, filling an injury spot or something like that, and you're a deep enough league, you can afford to take on a guy to stash. Mcfarland is somebody a lot of people kind of interested in. He didn't blow the combine away, but we know he's kind of got that versatility. But the main thing is the offense he's in. And we know that Connor tends to get injured. So he now becomes one of kind of the higher end insurance policies at running back. And there's not a whole lot to go around. And then let me finish with Darrynton Evans, who is my favorite sleeper, who's still sleeping, hasn't woken up yet, but he finally hit the field. All right. And talk about high end insurance policies. If, God forbid, something would happen to Derrick Henry, Evans could all of a sudden be a top 10 running back. Not kidding, just because that's the offense he plays in. He is not Derrick Henry. I'm not saying that, okay? I didn't say that. But this is a guy who there's no depth there, right? Jeremy McNichols, who bounced around in practice squads and was cut by 3 teams the last couple of years, he's the backup, okay? to Darrynton Evans. So if Henry gets hurt, Evans is all of a sudden going to be the guy everyone's going to be adding. If you have room to stash somebody, I'd say do it now just in case. But even so, I think Evans will kind of work his way into the mix. He'll be kind of a pass catching threat too, all right, which Henry really isn't. So that's something to consider. So it doesn't look too exciting now, but I'm just saying if you're looking ahead a couple of weeks, somebody who could have value, Evans is a guy that I'm definitely interested in. And also because I kind of picked him on my preseason sleeper team, so I'm really hoping that pays off. And then a couple other names here that you probably don't want to add, but you know what? Chris Thompson is still there. They might work him into action a little bit more as this team realizes they can't run James Robinson into the ground. And then Frank Gore, you know what? Don't worry about Pirine. He's not going to get that much love in New York. And in fact, nobody in New York really deserves any credit under Adam Gase's offense. But you know what? Gore is still there. If you just need a player you know is going to be on the field and touch the ball and get you a few points, it's Gore, right? And they're bound to score a touchdown eventually one of these days. All right, guys, that does it for running back. Sorry I didn't have better options this week, but that's just how it is. Maybe next week we'll have some interesting names to pop on there. I should also mention Tariq Cohen, unfortunately out for the year. I don't think the Bears are going to add another running back to the mix or sign somebody. It looks like it might be Cordero Patterson kind of playing in the backfield, which I don't know that makes him fantasy relevant. Something to keep in mind if you're in a really, really, really deep league, though. All right, that'll do it for running back. Check out our other positions. We got quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end, as I mentioned, for Waiver Wire. And then in a couple days, we'll be putting out our start sit episode with all the latest advice. And we're doing Game Day Live. All right, Sunday mornings, injury news and updates to let you know who's in, who's out, and who to pivot to if you need to. All right, hit that subscribe button. Catch all the latest. Thanks for watching.